Good morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us this morning in our webinar series. And today we're going to talk a little bit about CBI. So CBI essentially stands for Co-ordinated Building Information. And it is actually the coding system that binds the industry together because it covers the whole process and it covers all the different facets of the process from inception to completion. And essentially it's the number system, and it breaks down through multiple layers. Thanks, Yash. And so it breaks down through the layers and starts with classes. So you can arrange your library and your practice using CBI. Obviously, you can put together your specification using CBI. And what happens is you'd use different levels. So level 1 could be quite good for arranging your library, maybe level 1, level 2. So you've got classes and groups, depending on how much you have in your library, how you like to set your library up, etc. And potentially you could even break your library down into 3 subgroups, which would be your classes groups and subgroups, which would include the subparts. But when it comes to specification writing, you'd want to break down right down to level 4, because that gets specific to individual work sections rather than groupings. And you see 2 examples there. You see a generic or general work section, 5113 plus with linings, and you see a product specific work section, which is 5113G. So that's a manufacturer based work section. Now there's quite a difference between a general and generic work section. The generic work section tends to be general and caters for, it could be this or it could be that, also tend to be bigger. And whereas a product specific work section will be exact to the product, and then with the appropriate level of editing will then become exact to the project. What that also means is it'll be nice and concise, and it'll potentially be smaller than the general section. But at the early concept design and all that sort of thing, having a generic section in there until you get more information and you work your way down to develop design or detailed design, and then you can add the level of granularity that includes the specific products that are going to be required for the project that you're designing. Those work groups or classes, I guess, run from 1 to 8. So we can go next slide. Thanks, Yash. And essentially, 1 is your general section, so that tends to talk about the project requirements. And so in there you have a lot of your practice IP information. We have some Green Star, Home Star, Living Building Challenge, etc. stuff in there. We have some automated clauses around warranties and as-built documentation, operation and maintenance and the likes. And then we break down into the rest of the classes, which essentially are around the project itself. And for the most part, this is how you put the project together. So that is the way that CBI is organised. It's an international standard, and in New Zealand, Masterspec administers that standard here in this part of the world. Essentially, there's probably 1,000 odd different CBI numbers, but the New Zealand market only requires I think somewhere over 800 of them, because of the nature of our specific conditions here in New Zealand. But they're arranged, as I said, in order of how you would work your way through that, putting that building together. So 2 is what happens when you get on site, and 3 is when you start to build your structure, 4 is when you close it in, 5 you're starting to work inside, and 6 is you finish, and 7 is your services, etc. Now the thing is here is that the subcontractors, etc., e.g. your service engineers, when they collaborate with you and they bring in their part, which is going to come from within the class 7, then it'll automatically put itself into the correct place within that specification. So it makes it really easy for somebody picking up that specification to identify where they need to go to look for the things that they're looking for. So any trade-based orientation information is contained within the work sections, because the New Zealand market is diverse enough that we don't so much have consistency. In other words, some builders do everything on site and some builders do nothing on site. So rather than at the early stages, concept, etc., trying to identify what part the builder's going to do, what we actually do is we say this is the part of the building, and whichever trade's responsible for that part of the building, they can go there to find the piece of information. So Yash has now worked his way into a specification, and as you can see, it all works nicely. They're all drop downs, and you find the sections that you like, and you can bring them into your specification to start building that information. That will mean that the people downstream from you are able to follow and understand and work through the information they need to put that to put that, or to go through the various steps depending on what discipline they are. So that'll work through the quantity surveyors and the other consultants, etc., right through to the construction people, and it just gives a nice orderly way to keep the information all nice and consistent and really easy to follow. Okay. And so as you can see, Yash has put in some generic and some product-specific work sections. Yash, anything to add there?
So in the Masterspec platform, here in the search functionality, it supports searching by CBI number as well. So if you knew the CBI number, you can search by that as well to find a work section. You can obviously search by the name of the work section as well. And if you're adding a branded work section, then you can search by name of the manufacturer as well. Now, the next step of that in collating information resource about your project would be your product research and product information. So for something like a general work section or a generic work section, it is very handy when you have the CBI number and you can research for your product using the CBI functionality. So what happens, guys, is here because this is a general work section, there is no particular brand or product that has been specified under this. As you can see here, the manufacturer details are empty. So what that means is you can now go under My Products tab within your specification and do your product research. So as Jeremy said, I am looking at 4221, which means I will click on CBI here and then go to 4, which is enclosure. And then under 4, I will go to 42, which would be wall cladding. And then under wall cladding, I will go to 422, which will be timber wall cladding. So I've reached till the third subgroup, which is timber wall cladding. And then under that, I've still got the different work sections or the class. So I will go to 4221, which is timber solid cladding. And then when I click on this, it will bring up all the related products which apply to this particular work section. So this then allows you to do your research. It allows you to look at different details, because you can click on every link and then you can look at further details of each manufacturer. Like this one has a PTS. They have further links to look at drawings, technical data, so on and so forth. So this allows you to research for your products exactly that matches your work section. So the next section that we are going to cover, which is very important, and how Masterspec ties into all this, is the drawings side of things, because you can also use CBI to match or to link your specification to your drawing through the Master Key plugin. So for that, Jeremy is going to talk about that further. So Jeremy, do you want to take over?
Sure. So Yash is opening up the Jib plasterboard linings work section. Okay, so it's a product specific work section, and essentially he's done some editing there, so that the section is starting to reflect what the project's about, and he can make changes to the clause headings, and he can add in bits of information that will make the clause heading become a good keynote, as it were. And that it may not be required, but there may be situations where it is. But obviously MasterKey has that flexibility. If there's not quite enough information there, e.g. the thickness, then you can just add that through. And then if we switch across to the drawing, and we've linked the project to the drawing and we've started the keynote, then we can then apply that to the drawing. And as you can see there, the bottom note there is Jib Standard Systems walls 13 mil. Now, what you're seeing there is the CBI number 5113G, okay? And so that's the link, I guess, the code between the two things. And then 4.1 is actually the clause number. So that's the clause from which Yash got the information. And so the thing here is that once the builder comes to terms with this, which shouldn't take too long, is that he's got his piece of drawing detail and he knows exactly where in the specification to look to find additional information for that piece of detail. So again, it's utilizing that CBI to join the specification and the drawing set together in a dynamic fashion via keynoting. And what that means is because it's a dynamic live link, the two things should always say the same thing. And so if a change is made to the specification, it drives through to the drawing set and identifies on the drawing set, so that what that means is you can then apply that across the drawings, and thus adding to the consistency. So not only is it the coding system that works through and it follows through all the various trades, what it is it's also the I guess part of the technology that links those two things together, because we really need our specification and our drawing sets to have the same piece of information. CBI enables us to do that.
Yeah, and yes, we have demonstrated here with the branded work section, but it works for general or generic work sections as well, as we have shown here in this general work section here, where what we've done is we've also again made some changes to a couple of work sections. So if we look at clause 4.1, which is building wraps / underlays, and clause 4.4, which is board and batten. And if we want to carry this over to our drawings, then it can be done in the same way as we did with the previous one. As you can see here, 4221 4.1. So it has carried that clause, the CBI number and the clause number. And then we can, using master key, we have put those keynotes into our drawing. And same thing for clause 4.4. Again, it shows which CBI number it is, and then it shows the keynote for that particular component on the drawing as well. So guys, that concludes our information session for today. We are happy to take any questions. If you guys have, just send us through the Q&A channel. Also, I'm going to launch the poll as usual. So if you guys can give us some feedback on today's session, what did you think about today's session, and what more information, what other sessions you would like us to see, then that would be really valuable. So Jeremy, we've got a first question for today, and that question is, what happens when there is if there is a custom work section?
Thanks, Yash. So yeah, there's times when you might have a brand new product or a different product that you want to incorporate in. And the thing about that is, if for some reason there's not actually a work section for it, then you can create a custom work section. And creating a custom work section is quite a simple process, but still aligns itself to CBI, because when you go to create a custom work section, it'll ask you where it needs to go. And essentially, so you can see there, it breaks down the two levels of granularity to actually put that product that the custom work section needs to be around into the correct location in terms of the part of the building process, so that, again, anybody picking that specification up can see when it comes to that new product that you've created the custom work section, where exactly they'll know where to look to find it, essentially. And so he'll break down the next level of granularity, and then he'll call the work section whatever is relative to that work section. And then what it'll do is it will give him the template from which he can build that custom work section. But essentially, because he's coded it, anybody picking up the specification will know exactly where to look to find it. So the fact that it wasn't potentially in the Masterspec system doesn't throw the system out, because it'll still sit, and as you can see on the left-hand side, it's put it into the 700 series. So when you see your index, etc., it's in the right place. So
as Jeremy said, Jeremy just mentioned that the reason why I picked this one, because this is a very peculiar one. Even though it sits under the electrical for services, as you can see, that is not a work section which is currently within the Masterspec system. But if you want to write a work section, which is a custom work section, obviously, then it automatically arranges it itself according to where it should sit within the CBI class. So
yeah, so anyone else working in that electrical area, and so as you can see on the right hand side, there's a couple of other work sections in there. So anybody else working in that area, potentially the electrician or one of the sub trades, etc., will then also see that charging station there as well. I guess on a side note, at some stage, Masterspec will have a work section for that. I guess it's something that we'll be working on, because it's one of those things that's becoming more common. But as it turns out, as you saw there is actually a CBI for it, even if we don't have a work section for it yet.
Yep. So Jeremy, I have one more question. Is there a brand's code marked or appraised product section to assist the user? I can take this one, Jeremy, if you like.
Okay, thanks, Yash.
So there is no particular product section which has brands code marked or appraised. In fact, how it is arranged is that any system which is got a brand's appraisal, it will have that reference within that work section. Okay. So we have another question coming, Jeremy, and it says that as this is an international standard, is it possible to locate work sections that are used in other countries?
Okay, so when it comes to international standards, if they have relevance in New Zealand, there's every show that they will be mentioned within that work section. So obviously Australia, New Zealand, if there's a dual standard there, then yes, the information will be included. And sometimes in a situation like the group numbers, etc., where we, instead of developing all that information in New Zealand, potentially we've used the UK or another country's version of it and converted that to make sense of it for the New Zealand market. So it just really depends on whether it has relevance here in New Zealand.
Yeah, and as Jeremy mentioned here, that while CBI as a system is as an international standard, every country adopts CBI or its equivalent version in how it suits the way projects are conducted. As Jeremy mentioned, that the nature of work, the nature of construction work carried out in New Zealand is a bit different to how it is carried out in even say Australia, or say US or Canada or the UK. So you would have an equivalent system, but it would not probably be called CBI. It is called CBI or Co-ordinated Building Information in New Zealand. It would be called something else in US, like in US and Canada, it is known as master format. In UK, I think it's called Uniclass. So it is known by different names, but the underlying concept is of CBI is an international standard, which comes from an international standard called the Common Arrangement of Work Sections standard. So you will see that if you compare it to the work section arrangement from, for example, our closest neighbors, which is Australia, you will see that there are some similarities. The numbers may not match. The CBI codes here, the 4-digit numbers may not match. But the way the work sections are arranged and the way the specification is built is pretty similar, or the underlying standard is still pretty similar to what we do here in New Zealand. That was really good, guys. If there are any more questions, please keep them coming. And I see that there is one more question coming, and it says, how could you use the system for facilities management?
Well, I guess the same applies as we sort of said earlier on. So as long as you have a system within your facilities management that identifies different things that need to be, I guess, managed, maintained, etc., through the life of the building, etc., then the CBI is the logical way to order them, because then when you go to do a certain part of maintenance, then you'll know the key areas that information lives in, by virtue of CBI. So if it's part of the electrical, then you'll look towards the 700s, or the 7 series, sorry. And so it'll be nice and easy to find that information. Obviously, we've done some things like operation and maintenance automated schedule within the general area, and what that does is that gives a schedule of all the work sections that have an operation and maintenance requirement listed as part of their work part of their makeup of the work section. So those two things can work nicely in conjunction, because it's a nice ready reckoner. I'm doing this part of the building maintenance, etc. Bang, here's where I go and get the information about the products that are in that area.
So Jeremy, the next question that we have is, does the CBI have any info on maintenance requirements for assets?
The way I see that, if I'm interpreting the question correct, is that the information will live within the individual work sections, because the manufacturer will build his work section and have the information about warranties, how to maintain it, and the likes, and all that information will be covered within the individual work section. So there doesn't tend to be a separate work section that covers maintenance, because it's got no reference point to all the other products. So the automated schedule will identify them, but what happens is, as Yash is showing you there on the screen, is that a lot of that information happens within the beginning parts of the work section itself. So individually, the manufacturers has taken care of that information.
Yep. So guys, one important thing to remember here is that CBI actually points towards a particular system rather than a project on the whole. So you can arrange your project using the CBI in the standard format, whereas however, if you're looking for details on a particular system, the CBI points you towards that particular system, after which you can go in and then look at the details of the system. So as Jeremy just mentioned here, we have the different details about the products, about the compliance, about the product compliance and product properties, and then execution on how it is to be stored and handled, and warranty and application. It's all under that particular work section. So the CBI points you towards a particular work section system. If there are any more questions, do let them come through, and we'll do our best to answer them. Again, if you guys can take some time to take the poll and give us some feedback, that would be really helpful. This session will be available to be viewed later if you want to, by going through our training and the webinar page, which is living on our website under training and webinars. So as you can see here, this is a replay, or the video of this webinar will be available to view later. I have another question, Jeremy. So the question here is that how can it help you for health and safety / risk?
Okay, the same thing applies as the operation and maintenance. It all exists within the work section itself. So it either takes care of it, or it points you to other resources in order to how to handle it safely, how to install it safely, how to maintain it safely. So it may not necessarily be in depth in the work section, because it's likely to point out to other supporting documentations that will actually talk about the specifics of the various parts.
If you have more questions, guys, you can always send us your questions at Gen, that's GEN @masterspec.co.nz. You can also call our office. So we are back in the office under level 2, as most of you would be. And we are happy to take your calls and your questions. So do call us at our office if you have more questions. So as I was saying, the webinar will be available for viewing later. Also, you can view our previous webinars that are available for viewing from this. So if you click any link, you can look at the topic and you can view the webinar from this site. So guys, that concludes our session for today. Take care, and we will see you next time.